Okay, so we are on day 2 of Mishlei 21:15. Simcha latzadik asos mishpat umchita lepoalei aven. Okay, so it's a little tricky to translate, or sorry, not tricky to translate, tricky to syntactify, right? So simcha latzadik asos mishpat. Doing of justice is a joy for the tzaddik. Umechita lepoalei aven, and mechita either means destruction, breaking, or ruin. That's like one set of meanings, or it could also mean terror. For the doers of iniquity. Okay. Second translation we had, or second syntactification, is joy to the tzaddik is the doing of justice, and joy to the doers of iniquity is ruin. The difference is basically like, what are the, there's got to be a clear way to say this. What are the two alternatives? In other words, like in the first translation, you have basically the subject is the doing of justice, and it's saying that doing of justice is joy to the tzaddik, and it is terror or destruction for the doers of iniquity. According to the second reading, it's basically saying two different types of parallel joys. For the tzaddik, there's a joy in doing justice. For the polei aven, there's a joy in doing in ruin, in ruin, right? So we had at least 2 ideas yesterday, if not more. Or I think I said we have 2.5 ideas, right? So one idea was, according to the first translation, let's go to the questions though. Questions are, what is asiyas mishpat in this context? Is the tzaddik the doer of justice, or is he happy regardless of who the doer is? Also in the second half, is it only ruin or destruction that the polei aven do, or is it they just like any destruction? Question 2, what is the nature of the tzaddik's simcha in the doing of mishpat? Why is he sameach? 3, what is a poel aven? Is it just someone who does an avera? Is it a personality type, like Mishlei archetype? What is aven here? 4, how many instances of pu'ulas aven are necessary for the second half to apply? In other words, like, do you have to be doing this like as a regular thing, or is just like even one instance of aven puts you in that category? Likewise in the first half, although less so because first half tzaddik is actually a category. 5, what is Megita in this context? Megita, if you translate it as destruction, breaking, or ruin, is it a psychological experience of destruction or ruin, or is it a physical reality, like they actually like suffer something in the real world? 6, what is the relationship between the two halves of the pasuk? Which ones are the opposites? Is it tzaddik and polei aven are opposites? If so, that's weird because you usually think tzaddik and Russia. Is it simcha and mechita, like fear and joy? Are those the opposites? Is it asos mishpat and ruin? Is asos mishpat and polei aven? So a lot of mixing and matching there. 7, who is the specific audience of the pasuk? What's the practical application? So quick review of the ideas we had yesterday. One idea was going with the translation of, I think actually my idea, you could translate as either destruction, breaking, or ruin, or terror, which is that when justice is implemented in a society, regardless of who does it, the tzaddik rejoices because he knows that justice is the tool that is used to promote righteousness in the society, and that's going to be good for everybody, including him. So the more justice, the better it is for everybody. And the tzaddik doesn't have to be worried about any personal iniquity that he's going to get caught for, because he doesn't do any of that. The polei aven, on the other hand, who are engaged in crime or illegal activity, or whatever you want to say polei aven is. So number one, they're in a constant state of worry about that they're going to get caught and prosecuted. And so that is the terror. And then when they do get prosecuted, then they actually suffer destruction. It actually ruins them. And they can't even be happy about progress in society, because the more well-ordered society gets, the greater are the chances that the Justice Department is going to get itself together and they come after them. So it's a really conflict-ridden life. That was my idea. Then we had David's approach, which had to do with the fact that that there's a certain joy, and David went according to the second interpretation. There's a joy associated with the doing of justice per se, separate from the pleasure and benefit you get from the result of that. Like just being involved in doing justice is something that brings joy to the tzaddik. And similarly, like bringing about chaos and destruction and like sticking to the man, is something that is a source of independent joy for the polei aven, even if they don't get any particular benefit out of it. And the pasuk is warning against that emotion, or saying that you should use that emotion to your advantage. So the warning is, if you are a doer of iniquity, then be very careful not to get caught up in just the joy of the bringing things down, because then you're going to deviate from like, your own, what you go into a certain area of oven with a certain plan to get a certain result, but you could easily become attracted to like let's say you go into a store to rob the store, and then you go and you destroy you do a bunch of vandalism, that wasn't part of your plan. And like, you're just exposing yourself to more consequences, and it could spiral out of control. Or similarly, if you are someone who is employing pole oven, even if you're a good guy, you got to be aware that that's going to be something that they're going to want to like engage in, and they're going to be, like, what do you call it? Like Umbridge creating the Inquisition, her inquisitors, and hiring a bunch of Slytherin to do that job. Of course, they're going to indulge in that and like use it as an extension of their bullying power. Similarly with the tzaddik, if you realize that there is a certain joy that you get from doing mishpat, from doing mishpat, and you can put yourself in situations where you can tap into that, it could be a good lo lishma for making you do even more mishpat. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So the way I was thinking of it is that the pasuk was talking to like somebody who's in the middle.
Yeah.
And that this is like the third of the 2.5.
Yeah.
That is talking to somebody who's in the middle, and that they should set up for themselves things that they will want, that emotionally they will want to do what their intellect wants them to do.
Right.
And that so you should set up things, if they would set things that then will lead them toward the trend of the tzaddik versus things that will lead them toward the trend of the kolaya.
Right. Yeah, that's good. The only I forgot if I said this during shir or after shir. I think the only criticism I have of your whole approach is mishpat to me is much more narrow than the way that we were talking about mishpat. Like, mishpat is the execution of justice, of punishing people who do things wrong or awarding good to those who, like, by law deserve it. So yours is much more like tzedek, my understanding of what tzedek is, or goodness in general. But perhaps you could say that mishpat is that, if you take it as the opposite of pole oven. Yaakov, do you want to say something? Yeah.
Why do pole oven enjoy Megita even if it doesn't benefit them?
Right. So I think that the reason why pole oven enjoy Megita, even if it doesn't benefit them, is that they have a lifestyle that is kind of predicated on no rules or on lawlessness, and for themselves, like, they can't get away with their oven, their self-serving oven. The law is an obstacle to their self-serving oven, right? So whenever there is a degradation of law and order, it makes them happy, both because in the actual effects on the society, it makes it more possible for them to do their lifestyle. And then also the feeling of satisfaction of it's a kiyum in their fantasy of lawlessness. Like, in the same way as like little kids, when they see, like, in a TV show, like, a mean parent getting slimed or whatever, I don't know, they rejoice in that because the parent is the obstacle to them acting on their taivas. So there's a fantasy when they see like that authority figure being brought down that gives them like a rise. So I think it's both. Yeah. Okay. So anything? Yeah.
I have another like possible idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So this isn't fully fleshed out, but I'd say it's the way I was thinking about it is that it's the like according to the first way, but it's the tzaddik or the pole oven who are the person who is enacting justice.
Okay. So meaning, just to make sure I get this right. So when the tzaddik does justice, then he gets joy, and when the pole oven do justice, then that's a mechita to them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd say the chiddush is in the second half that
right.
I'm not entirely sure what the mechanism would be, but when the pole oven do justice, which is a good thing because of their past actions and what they've the dynamics that they've set up for themselves, that then when they do justice, it doesn't either people don't relate to them as like doing it for like justice reasons, or they're not doing it for justice reasons, or I guess I'm not sure why, but because they're doing justice like as Poli oven, they get consequences.
Okay. Yeah, I like the reading. Like, can we expand upon that? So, and I think here you have to go with destruction, breaking, or ruin, not terror. I don't think terror makes sense there. Right. So you're saying that the fact that they are identified by people in a society as Poli oven means that when they try to do justice, then there's going to be some sort of backfiring, destructive effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can see that happening. I mean, one of the things is that, like, if someone is themselves always violating the law, when they try to enforce the law on someone else, no one is going to take them seriously, So like it's this is why I was very and I'm not saying this as a social commentary on the dorm because I have no idea what the situation in the dorm is, but I remember when I was in yeshiva, then there was a thing where dorm counselors were exempt from the davening knas, and I thought that was the most destructive policy ever. Not the good. Yeah, and so like I remember, I mean, I was I think I don't know if I ever actually had to do this, but I at least made it clear because I don't think I missed davening, but that I would knas myself if I was maybe once or something like that in my 3 years as dorm counselor, and like I thought it was very important that you have to the king can't be above the law, So if you are no one is, it's to undermine all your credibility and it's going to promote more injustice in the society, either because people won't take it seriously or as like a retaliatory thing. Yeah.
It's like when you see cops completely ignore the road rules.
Exactly. Yeah. I hate that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that'd be a good example of this. And obviously if they're actually doing real pull-out and like real crimes, like we're describing like rule infractions, I think is a different thing than an actual crime. That's just, you're not going to have a society that works that way. So I agree with you that the chiddush is in that second half here. Right. But what's what could we formulate the idea better? I feel like there's a good idea here. Methodologically speaking, by the way, there's 2 steps I'm realizing I'm talking about here. That's the interpretation of the pasuk, but we need the idea. We need to define the idea here. And I think like it's very easy to just content yourself with an interpretation of the pasuk, but unless you like bring it to a formulation, then you're going to be missing something. I feel like the question lies in the Havamina. What is the Havamina here? Yeah, David?
Without that question,
yeah.
But I do think that there's, insofar as like a destruction that comes to doers of, or people who identify as doers of iniquity when they do things that are just,
yeah,
is within the action itself, they're going to have some like internal deeper, like something's like killing them inside.
Mm-hmm.
So even when say like something good will happen, like right, if it's even like something that will be beneficial for all in society, or will be,
yeah,
they themselves will always have this internal strife from doing anything that is good.
So when did I talk about this? I don't know if this was in a morning Mishlei this year or not. I actually talked about how I categorically am opposed to that kind of interpretation of Mishlei, and I'll tell you why. And I'm not saying that it's not present, but I think that if I'm not denying what you're saying is true, right? We'll just to repeat in case it didn't show up on the thing. So I was saying that like the person who identifies as a pole oven is going to have like an internal conflict that he's always going to like, that's always going to be there, and that's going to create pain or whatever, So you can debate whether or not that's factually true. Okay, I think that there are a lot of people who either are like who are pole oven who are sociopathic, or they've rationalized it, or they're just very good at going on that side of the cognitive dissonance. I don't necessarily think that they're always going to have a conflict. Maybe some when it's really, really big, they will. But I don't even know if like, let's say like if the Nazis, I think it is possible to is the word inure yourself? Is that a word? Hold on, I gotta look at this. Inure. Is it 2 N's? To inure yourself, accustom someone to something especially unpleasant, right? So to inure yourself to doing even like horrible like atrocities, So you could debate whether it's even factually true what W is saying, but let's say it is factually true. If it is, I don't think Mishlei like I have not seen Mishlei use that as a consequence. In other words, Mishlei tends to focus on actual consequences you suffer, like in the physical world, or like ways that this transforms your character and to make you into a worse decision maker. Just saying you're going to feel guilty, or you're going to feel ashamed, or you're going to feel conflict, I don't think Mishlei tends to focus on that as a consequence, perhaps for the reasons that I said, that it's so easy to sidestep those. That's my take. Again, I'm not saying that as a hard rule. That's just in my experience with Mishlei. But going back to the question on just the final step of Isaac's thing, yeah.
I apologize. Can you repeat that?
What I just said?
Yeah.
Yeah, that actions have real world consequences, and they also have internal feeling consequences. I haven't seen Mishlei focus on the internal feeling consequences. Yeah. Yeah, just it tends to focus on the real world consequences or the transformation of character consequences. Like this will make you into a worse decision maker or a worse person, and that will have consequences. Yeah. I think the example again, I feel like I talked about this like very recently, that it was yesterday.
I think so.
I know. Well, I quoted the pasuk.
Megita thing, that's internal terror.
Oh no, I'm saying like I quoted the pasuk Ben Chacham Yisamach Av Ben Ksil Turas Imo, that a wise son is brings joy to his father, and a shame and a foolish son is brings depression to his mother. And like I remember one time, I don't know if this is in my share or Rabbi Moskowitz this year, someone said that like, you know, like they interpreted the pasuk in a way where they explained all the stuff in the pasuk, but then they said the point of the pasuk was to show that like if you make your father happy, you'll feel good, you know. And I just don't see Mishlei having those types of things. If you say if you make your father happy, you'll feel good, and therefore blah 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 blah, like that would be good for you. So then I can see that. But just the like you'll make daddy happy or make mommy sad, and that makes you feel bad. I just don't see Mishlei as like talking about that realm, you know. Even though it's true, it is true that that's going to happen. I just don't see Shlomo talking about that. Yeah. Okay, so back to the question on Isaac's interpretation here. So I think the practical outcome, or the practical lesson in the pasuk would be, you cannot be an executor of justice if you are Pola Oven. It's going to backfire and cause even more injustice in the society and actual destructive consequences for you, right? So like if you're going to be a stickler for the rules, let's say in your job, you know, as a teacher, as a CEO, whatever it is, as a parent, and the people who are under you see you violating these rules, it will not work out. You will not be able to do your job, and you will get like the consequences of further breaches of justice. Now, can we use that to then have a chiddush in the first half?
What the tzaddik is doing differently?
Well, so we know what the tzaddik is doing differently, right? Which is that he is in line with justice. But how does the simcha contribute to the well-being of the society or the well-being of the tzaddik? I mean, I think this works out also, right? I just have to find an example of this. Like, here's an example. I don't know if this is still true, but in Starbucks, I know that there was a rule that the managers of the stores, you know, there's a certain like shift in terms of like who takes out the garbage and like who cleans the windows and who does like obviously the fun task is being a barista, right? Like making the drinks, you know, I don't know if it's fun, but like that's the say it again?
Glamorous job.
The glamorous job, correct, right? So then, but taking out the garbage is not so much the case, right? Cleaning the tables. So I know that when you're a new employee, then you like they start you off on like the non-glamorous jobs, and then you work your way up to be a barista. And I think there's like a mentoring system where like the manager or the higher ups like train you. So part of that thing is that the managers also go through the lowly tasks and like do the jobs with you, or like have those rotations. I don't remember what the actual system is. I didn't work in Starbucks, but I read a book about it once. So I think that there is a certain, like if you as a new employee saw like the boss of your store who because Starbucks is a good system, they run their stores really well. You see them like joyously performing all of even the lowliest tasks. It bolsters your conviction in the fact that, like this is a good system. And the fact that like my boss is like engaging in it in a positive way makes me more like on board with like doing what's good for the entire system, like, so it's not just a thing, like it's the opposite of what we said about like the dorm counselor, like not connosing himself for being late for not going to davening. This is like, you see that even the higher ups believe that this is a good system and they are happy to do these tasks, and it makes you want to do this even more. Yeah.
It's funny because that just reminds me of a verse. I don't know where it is about I'm assuming it's somewhere in those about how in order to like further coerce the Jews, like power would take out of like in some bricklaying.
Oh yeah, that's a good strike. Oh, so this is interesting. So that actually segues into a good application, which is that you can even use this for. This is a good Mishleic mechanism in the sense that you can use this for nefarious purposes, like if you like if you're perceived as not a pole oven, like if you're perceived as a tzaddik, like in Paro's case where he was deified or whatever, so then you could use this to your advantage, And also, if you're a tzaddik, you can use this even for not if you're a tzaddik. You could use this for what do you call it? You can use this for not necessarily the most lishma purposes also. Like, I'll give you an example. This might not be the best example, but when Steve Jobs, founded Apple, and then he was ousted from Apple, and then Apple was in dire need, and then they hired him back, and he made this decision to not take a salary, right? Now, I think he actually had to take a $1 salary. I think that was like for tax purposes or whatever, but he didn't take a salary, So the thing is that like what it does is it deflects from him the accusation of, oh, you're just doing this to like make profit, like to swoop in and like, now I think he did it so he would have more control, right? Like the fact that no one was paying a salary meant that they can't use that as leverage, right? So he did it actually to get more control over the company, So it wasn't like he was doing it as a means to something else, but like it's still, because he had simcha in doing this job in the company, and he wasn't subject to like the charge of you're just a pole oven who's trying to like profit off of this thing. Then like worked out for him. Yeah. Okay, let's do some other mafarshim. I did want to go back to Rabbeinu Yonah yesterday, but because we don't have as much time, I kind of want to like table that for a second and go to the Meiri, because we didn't read the Meiri, right?
No.
Okay, so looks like wait, start on the previous page. Meiri, no, it doesn't. Okay, so pull oven. Okay, Hine chova aleinu la. Oh, that's Rabbeinu Yonah. Razal, right? That's where we at.
Yeah.
Darshuhu b'derech Torii. So Chazal interpreted this in a Torah as a Torah idea. Umilas mishpat munachas lifamim ala onesh. Mishpat is sometimes a reference to punishment. Wow, none of us read it that way. That the tzaddik is happy when he is punished sometimes. I think the sometimes is going off of the tzaddik is not usually going to be punished, right? Bevo alav yisurin ushar mine hatzaros. When afflictions come upon him and other types of tzara, so that he can receive through those afflictions and sorrows the partial, the punishment for the minimal averos that he's done in this world. Uvehefech, and the opposite, hatzlachas harishayim ba'olam hazeh, is the success of the wicked in this world. V'hulahem mechita, this for them is a destruction. L'tardam min ha'olam haba, to drive them out of olam haba. V'chein efshar lefar. Okay, so that's one idea. Let's stop there and just reflect on that for a second here. I saw a Peanuts cartoon this morning that might be a good example of this. Hold on, let me find it. Wait. Let's go to Peanuts folder. It's so weird how the search never works. I think it's a lag thing. It doesn't work. It's so much slower on when I'm on Zoom. Okay. Peanuts cartoon. What was it called? What did I call it? I mean, oh, here we go. This is a Christmas cartoon. So Linus is says, I can't stand it. Okay. Happiness is getting all your Christmas thank you letters written. Okay, fine. Those are just intro things. All right. Hi, Charlie Brown. Come on in. Linus says, welcoming you in. See, just like I told you, look at all this stuff. A bicycle game, bicycle games, clothes, baseball equipment, more clothes, more toys, candy, books, a transistor radio. This is the worst. This is terrible. This is my worst Christmas yet. How will I develop any character? I always get everything I want. So I think that's the idea of like tzaddikim rejoicing in their yisurin, that the, okay, let me actually just for contrast state this in like the childish way of viewing it. So I think the childish way of tzaddikim rejoicing in yisurin is you get, you do mitzvahs and you get like reward points, and you do averos and you get like punishment, like points, and like God's got to like mete out that punishment somehow. So like the tzaddikim want it in olam hazeh rather than olam haba, because olam haba is so much better than olam hazeh. That's like the infantile way of viewing it, right? But what does it actually mean that tzaddikim rejoice in Yisurin? Is tzaddikim have imperfections, and they know that if they don't get opportunities to work on those imperfections in olam hazeh, then it will affect their soul in olam haba. So whenever a situation in the world comes their way, whether it's yisurin, like stuff that happens naturally that makes them have psychological conflict, or whether it's an onesh, like from Beis Din or from hashgacha, they rejoice in that because it allows them to actually like change themselves and correct themselves and improve themselves, so that they will actually like have a better chelik in olam haba. So that's what it means that they rejoice in it. And so Meiri is learning it. Simcha l'tzadik asos mishpat. When punishment is enacted, then tzaddikim rejoice. When punishment is enacted towards them, then they rejoice. And Megita l'fol le'avin, but those same, he doesn't really explain the second half. How do you apply to the second half? I guess it means when Rishayim suffer these punishments, then that actually is something that like, what was it? Where? Oh, it says Mechida l'tardim min holam haba. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't explain like how they react to it. I assume it means that when they get punishment or yisurin, then they hate it, right? Like it is, or like it just destroys them because they don't do tshuva from it.
Well, also it's impeding their olam habanis, right? It's like, I want to do
Right.
what I want to do, and now I'm getting mishpat.
Right.
It's terrible.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is what I want. This is what's good for me. Is I don't know, to do whatever
Right.
it is, and that's how they view it.
Right, and it'll further drive them from olam haba. Yeah. All right, so that's one idea. Let's see the second idea here. V'chein efshar lefarish bo he'ar levilti hatos mishpat. You can also take this as a lesson that you should not pervert justice. Ki asiyaso simcha l'tzadik v'hefko l'rasha. Because the doing of justice is simcha for the tzaddik and opposite for the rasha. That's a little weak, right? I mean, so he's saying it's for. I mean, I don't know the idea yet, but I'm saying like my impression is that that's, Meiri doesn't seem to like it either. He doesn't like explain it, right? Efshar lefarish. But who would this be directed to? This is directed to someone who is not a tzaddik or a rasha, but he's in the position of someone who does mishpat. And he's saying you should be careful to not pervert mishpat because you want to bring simcha to the tzaddik and you want to bring destruction to the rasha. Like that's a very secondary reason to want to do mishpat. I'll give you an example that this might work out for. So I think everyone knows that like when you have a teacher who punishes the entire class for like something that only some bad people did, that never works out well, right? So as a kid, speaking as a former, like when I was in, a kid and like, always keeping all the rules and stuff, I think for kids like that, it makes them especially mad, and kids like that would ordinarily be completely like predisposed to like be on board with whatever the teacher did. But when like I as a do-gooder get punished for not doing anything wrong, like it makes me less inclined for no good reason to like be in line with the system. Now that's not the case he's talking about here, but I think that if there is, I mean, maybe it is the case actually, because that's a perversion of justice in a way. When someone who's in a position to do justice perverts the system and thereby okay, he's putting the emphasis on you should aim to bring simcha to the tzaddik. I'm kind of putting the emphasis on like depriving the tzaddik of that simcha, but I think they are related. That like there is a net detriment to the system when you upset the person who is totally committed to doing the system, to the system, and if you can make them happy by being in line with justice, then that's going to further that even more. And for the opposite, like, yeah, the primary reason you should do justice is to like maintain order in the system, but it's saying that like there is a net like benefit in making the wicked unhappy with your doing of justice, maybe, and or depriving them from the opportunity to be happy at the doing of at the perversion of justice. I'm not sure which one he's doing because he doesn't really explain. So it's not, in other words, like the area that this idea of the Meiri lies in is like the secondary effects of the emotional reactions to the tzaddik and to the polei avin based on perversions of justice. And I think it's a little weak because the pasuk doesn't really talk about perversion of justice. It talks about the doing of justice. So I think it like to make it seem like it's about, I don't know. I see how he's getting it, but it's not my favorite interpretation. Should we do Derek Nister? Derek Nister, Yomar Mishpat al Hadrachim Hamutzayim. So Mishpat, I think I've seen him say this before. Mishpat means the middle path. Okay, I think in terms of mitos, because Mishpat also means measure, right? Not just justice. The Ramaz al Shleimus Hamidos. This alludes to perfection of mitos. Shehim Siba Lezachus Hatzadik v'Hefech lahefech, which is the cause of the merit of the tzaddik, and the opposite is the opposite. Okay, not giving us much to work with here. Okay, fine. Let's do someone else. Do we want to go back to Rabbeinu Yonah?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. Rabbeinu Yonah made this about avodas Hashem in general. So let's reread the entire thing. We are obligated to serve Hashem with joy, as it is written, because you didn't serve Hashem, your God, with joy and gladness of heart. And it says, serve God with Hashem with joy. The tzaddik rejoices when another person serves Hashem and distances Avin and does mishpat. Because the tzaddik, his trait is to groan at the oppression of the poor and the theft and the gezel mishpat. Yeah, again, this is a paraphrasing of a pasuk in Koheles. Whatever. He groans when he sees injustice. And he rejoices when he sees the people doing justice and pursuing righteousness and truth. The trait of simcha, he's oror halev, he's pashit haruach al motzo chefzo, is the arousing of the heart and the expansion of the spirit when it finds what it wants. V'hi yoser minagila v'hamim masos. It's greater than a gladness and masos. Kasher yochichu haksuvim, as the pasuk indicate. I don't know why he has to say that. Umchitel, I guess just it's the highest level of or very high level of joy, like total joy, not like I got pleasure out of this thing. Umchitel l'poile avin asos mishpat yira v'fachad l'poile avin. The doing of justice is a cause of fear and trembling for the doers of iniquity. When they see people judging the city or executing judgment in the city over theft and robbery, they'll be afraid for their souls because of the crimes they did. They will also be punished for their hatred of justice, which they have hated and chosen. No one is going to rebuke or execute justice in the city over every crime. They'll be punished on the choice, not only on the action. Okay, so according to Rabbeinu Yonah, this is talking about this, saying we know that the tzaddik is rewarded for doing mishpat and good things, and we know that the rasha is punished for doing bad things. But in addition to that, the tzaddik has joy in when mishpat, based on his relationship to mishpat, and he's rewarded for that joy. That's ivdos Hashem b'simcha. And the polei avin, they are afraid of justice and they're punished for their hatred of justice. That's his main interpretation. So what's the idea? Something comes to my mind. I'm not getting the thing from my backpack. I'm getting water, but there's a certain mentality I think a lot of people have about justice that like it's only wrong if you get caught, and that is a mentality of justice which is a kind of a division of my mix, right? It's in the same like category. That view basically, like the only reality of justice to that person is the punishment. But the tzaddik, or what the pasuk is saying, is that there is an actual value of justice, and if you relate to that value properly with simcha, that itself is a perfection, and if you relate to it improperly, that's an imperfection. That's like a step. I mean, this might have to do with what the basis of justice is. And I know that this is obviously a big topic about what is justice, but there is definitely a shita. Okay, and let's not even go to the shita. Justice is predicated on a recognition that everyone is Tzelem Elokim, right? So if you, and everyone is equal as a Tzelem Elokim. I don't mean that all Tzelem Elokim are equal. I mean that that because everyone has a Tzelem Elokim, then the law should relate to everyone equally. And everyone is potentially capable of being a tzaddik like Moshe Rabbeinu, So if you deny justice, not only are you going to get Mishlei consequences, but you are also committing a philosophical error. And if you embrace a view that injustice is good and justice is bad, that's a philosophical distortion. So I can see why there would be a punishment for that, aside from whatever punishments you're getting for your acts of injustice. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's just sketching an idea. I know I'm not elaborating on it. And similarly, like people who value justice not just as a utilitarian thing, but as an affirmation of the equality of all human beings and the fact that we are all created b'Tzelem Elokim, that is a perfection. You're relating to every instance of justice as a way to affirm and strengthen that recognition and that idea. So it should give you joy when you see a human being treated as a human being through the justice system. Yeah. Okay, you want to do another one? Let's do the Bog, who's at the end of the packet. I'm going to use the Alatorah one just so I can do the justice of spotting any typos or whatever, and that way you can tell me if there's any typos. That way we'll check it. Okay, Simcha l'Tzadik kishiyase mishpat v'din ba'aretz, when when mishpat and judgment are done in the land. What was that? Oh, this is Rabag is in the back.
No, I'm seeing.
Oh, you don't see him?
I think we cut, not cut off.
Really? Did I forget a page? Oh, you're right. I just copied the wrong Rabag. Okay, there you go. Okay, so let's read it on here. Yeah. So Kishiyase Mishpat v'din ba'aretz hinei zeh ha'inyan simcha l'tzadik. So when mishpat and judgment are done on earth, this is a simcha for the tzaddik. She'az yiftach libo shelo yilached b'reshes hamalchus. Because then his heart will be secure that he will not be ensnared in the trap of the government. Kihu nishmar me'asos ra, because he guarded against doing evil. I mean, he guarded himself against doing evil. And this is going to be a destruction and a breaking to those who do iniquity. Because then they'll be afraid that they'll be punished on the evil that they've done. So that's like my interpretation from yesterday. Whether Malchus means the government or God. I think he means the government, but yeah. So that's exactly what I was saying, right? That that the tzaddik doesn't have anything to worry about, and the Russia does, and therefore he's afraid and is going to destroy him. Okay, so I don't think that's a new idea. Let's do other people we don't have. Let's do, so let me go back here. Shadal doesn't have anything. Let's do the Malbin. Malbin Doesn't have anything in Bir Milos, but he does here. Okay. Simcha l'tzadik asos mishpat umchita l'chol le'aven. Hatzadik hu mi she'nohek kafi chuke hatzedek. So tzaddik is someone who conducts himself according to the principles of righteousness. Upole aven heim ha'oskim b'koach hazaroa lashok v'lachmos. So here's his precise definition of pole aven: someone who is involved in the strength of his arm in oppression and violence or robbery. Shu hevech hatzedek, which is the opposite of tzedek. So it sounds like a guy who is doing resha, but not necessarily internally as a rasha the way that we define him. But he's basically using his power to take advantage of people who are vulnerable. Uve'es yate Hashem kav hamishpat, when God inclines the line of justice, lishbot kfi amasa, to judge according to actions, o be'es yase mishpat lamate me'es shoftei haaretz, or when he enacts justice to incline it from the judges of the earth. I don't know what this means. Az hatzadik yismach ki rota b'mishpat, then the tzaddik will rejoice because he wants mishpat. V'yodea ki az yizke b'hishafto, and he'll know that he'll merit in himself being judged. Okay, I think that amounts to the same thing that I was saying in the Ralbag, but I don't know what he's saying about these definitions. Anyone else in our packet that interests us? Does Rashi say something about God? That would be very Rashi. Ah, yes, look at that. Classic Rashi on Mishlei. Simcha l'tzadik asos mishpat, simcha l'kadosh baruch hu. Obviously, the tzaddik in the pasuk is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this is Rashi's interpretation. Lasos din b'tzadikim kadei l'zakosam l'chaya olam haba. Right? Footnote 20, tzadiko shel olam. So Rashi says that who's the tzaddik in our pasuk? It's God. It makes God happy, so to speak, to do din with the tzaddikim in order to merit them for life in the world to come. So what does that mean? And who are the polei avin? If God is the tzaddik, oh no, so it would be that when God brings destruction to the polei avin, then that makes God happy also. Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Nice. V'simcha l'tzaddikim. Oh, that's even weirder. V'simcha l'tzaddikim shekadosh baruch hu mevi aleim yisurin k'dei sheyizku l'chai olam haba. That's like the Meiri's parish, right? Kach nidref b'midrash Tehillim. Okay. Umechita hi l'folei avin. Midrash Tehillim? I guess not Midrash Mishlei. Okay. Umechita hi l'folei avin lefi she'ein nosnin lev lashuv. They don't take it to heart to do tshuva. V'hinai yisurin mo'ilin lahem klum mutzarin v'lo lahoyel. So that second part was all Meiri, right? But the first part is what I want to focus on here, right? So what do you get out of saying it makes God happy to do mishpat for the tzaddik, to bring them to merit to olam haba, and it would also bring simcha to God to do mishpat with the rashayim? I mean, obviously, right? Obviously, God likes doing justice. Yeah, right. It's his midos. Yeah, what's the big deal? I mean, I do think that I think that actually leads to an answer, because the midah is God is ki kol derech mishpat. But what additional idea do you get about God by saying that there's a simcha that God has in doing mishpat? What's that mashal?
It's a good thing. It's effectuating his will. It's not like it's just.
But isn't that kind of implicit in mishpat? I think you're on the right track though.
Implicit in the fact that God does it also. That is a good
Yeah.
You could say it's like some sort of necessary thing.
Right.
That has to be done.
Yeah, correct. Okay, yeah. In other words, mishpat could just be a necessary thing. Like, I would not say, and I'm kind of venturing this here, I don't have a basis of this. I would say it does not make God happy to run the laws of physics. That's a purely midas hadin thing, But here, there is an idea of simcha. There's not just in a CS din, there is a simcha in that, which maybe is expressed in the, okay, I'm going to posit this. I know we're at the end. I'm just going to posit this and we'll see what happens. Is we know that human beings are unique in that only we have free will. Everything else just runs according to God's law and God's will, no matter what. It has no choice. So there's no room for an idea of simcha. But when a being is given free will and they can actually, through their own causes, attain a higher level than they would have if they were just given into their natural desires, like following their animalistic instincts, that warrants a new mashal of God rejoices in that because it's greater than what he himself decreed. God does not decree for you to do mitzvos and increase your chelik olam haba. That's something that you do. So there's no room for simcha in anything else in nature except in human beings doing this. Something to think about. Okay, quick summary. The main new idea we got was, we had Isaac and the Meiri, right? Did we finish Isaac's idea? Isaac, did we finish your idea?
I thought
We
so.
did, right? Is that if you are someone who's doing mishpat and you are pol oven, it's going to backfire. But if you are a tzaddik and doing mishpat, it's going to front fire. I don't know what you want to call it. It's going to like make things even better, and people are going to be even more on board with it. And then you have Meiri's idea, which is when God enacts justice from tzaddikim, they rejoice in it because it gives them opportunities to perfect themselves. And for the Rishaim, not only do they not perfect themselves, they view it as something bad, and that further makes them even more corrupt, because then they're just going to like double down, or they're not going to learn anything, or they're going to turn against God, something like that. Yeah. Okay. Nice. All right. Tomorrow, let us plan to move on to another pasuk. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.